What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to AFS, America's Finest Sports. It's Monday. We've got Matt. We have myself, aka Makana. And we're going to be talking about some overall NFL stuff. And we're going to start off talking about Matthew Stafford. You know, technically he's in LA, but, relatively close to San Diego. And we're going to be talking about how there's some serious concerns for the Rams right now. And I'm not talking about oh, he may miss a few weeks. Like like baseball level, Tommy John potential implications for Matthew Stafford. Then we're going to be getting into some quarterback and talking about potential, it's their make or break year and what they need to do to kind of solidify themselves, whether it's in their offense or just in the NFL as a whole. And then finally talking about McCorkle and the offense of the New England Patriots because there's a lot of things going on right now, and we're going to be talking about all of that. But then obviously throughout the week we'll be also hosting a couple of different shows. I'll be doing basketball. Matt will be doing be working with Friar Talk. We're going to have a lot of stuff out. The schedule will be posted at some point this week, so stay tuned for all of that information. But Matt, why don't you start us off? Let's talk about Matthew Stafford. What is the deal going on right now?
So I think that's a big thing with Matthew Stafford is that we don't exactly know what the case is in Los Angeles. Sean McVay had a press conference and kind of sounded a little bit concerned about it just because he's like, yeah, this isn't something you typically see in a quarterback. It's a baseball injury. And he specifically said baseball. And we also know that it's an elbow injury. Basically, I think it's tendonitis or soreness in his arm. So what they're doing is they're resting Matthew Stafford and he's not playing nearly as much as he usually would in training camp. Now that side of it, could care less if Matthew Stafford's getting reps in camp. He's going to be completely fine. He's a veteran. He's been in the system for a little bit now. But the big concern is his arm going to snap? Not snap, but is he going to have to get Tommy John surgery? Because if he gets Tommy John surgery, that probably means his career is going to be done. That's an 18th month recovery. And it wouldn't at his age now, it wouldn't make much sense for him to try to make that recovery. This would be maybe the biggest impact out of all of the injuries so far that we've heard about in the NFL, because Matthew Stafford and the Rams are legit Super Bowl contenders, obviously coming off the Super Bowl championship, but this year they're still stacked. It's they're trying to get another championship. They have a couple years where Stafford's going to be there. This could be so detrimental to where that franchise is trying to go. And yes, they got the Super Bowl win last year, but they're trying to win 2 or 3. And they have the star caliber players to do that. Now, if Matthew Stafford was to go down, I have no idea what the Rams would do. Basically, the only guy that's kind of on the market is Jimmy G, and that doesn't really make any sense. So this would be a potential disaster for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, it's kind of hard to tell how serious it is. I think the best thing that fan bases can do, fans can do, is basically monitor the situation. How much is he playing? Is this something where it's looking like he's definitely going to be gone? Because if there's no Matthew Stafford this season, the Rams are not going to be good. I think who's their backup right now? Wolford, or I don't even know who their backup quarterback is. But not a guy you're going to win many games with. So this is potentially a massive injury, and would be probably the biggest blow of the whole NFL season. So very, very scary stuff right here for the Rams and Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, and adding on to the implications is Aaron Donald was not just considering retirement. I think he was leaning retirement after last season. And they were able to convince him, come back. We can run this back, right? We have all of our guys. The guys that won the Super Bowl, right? Ramsey locked up. Cooper Kupp. Matthew Stafford. You were all top 10 players at your position, all right? I would say top 5, but Stafford I don't think is in the top 5. And Stafford and Kupp may not be top 5.
I guess that's fair. I was thinking that's higher than that.
Yeah. But you've got the best player in the NFL, Aaron Donald. You've got the best cornerback in the NFL, the best secondary piece in the NFL, arguably the second best defensive player in the NFL in Jalen Ramsey. You have a roster that can compete. This team, they don't have draft picks. So not competing hurts them. So it's not like they can go, if Stafford misses the year, if he does have Tommy John, or he does have to do something where he can't play because of this injury in his elbow, the Rams are screwed, which means they have to go all in, which means they have to find a new quarterback. And there are players available, but it would be drastic. Because Matthew Stafford, the thing about Stafford is you know what you're going to get. Rocket arm, clutch, and a playmaker. Those are all things that you need when you're trying to win the Super Bowl. Consistent and clutch. The players available right now, I'll say outside of Jimmy Garoppolo, are very unproven. When it comes to postseason success and trying to build up to that, right? You can trade for a guy like Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield, whoever doesn't, end up becoming the starter. But like overall, they would have to go all in because otherwise it doesn't matter. Like, oh, you don't have a first round pick. I don't know when their next first round pick is. It's probably in 2038. Like, I swear, they trade every first round pick because they have the superstars. If they lose their main superstar, it's going to be too difficult to replace. And there's a chance that Donald retires after this year because he's like, never mind. We can't win. Heck, he may retire in training camp if they say, oh, Stafford's got to go out for the year. He may be like, nah, sorry, I'm not playing. I played a lot of my career with, Sam Bradford. We had Jared Goff. He's like, I'm done. Like, I needed a quarterback.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. I mean, and we look at this injury, we look at this Rams team, and with a healthy Matthew Stafford, and that's been the thing too, is like Stafford hasn't been healthy throughout his career, so there's also that aspect of like, is this being overblown a little bit? It absolutely could be, and that's for the Rams' sake. That's what they're hoping for. But he's a guy that has played throughout a lot of back injuries, a lot of different stuff. He's a guy that I'm going to say this, is a potential Hall of Fame quarterback. I don't know if he's quite there yet, but I definitely think that he's someone that kind of gets forgotten about when you talk about that. But you look at his numbers, you look at his career, you look at how clutch of a player he's been. He is one of the clutchest players, one of the clutchest quarterbacks ever. So losing him, I mean, for the league is massive, but the Rams, if they have him, are, I would say, probably the favorites in the NFC. I know you can toss the Bucs in there too, but it's kind of those two teams, and they could very likely be, Super Bowl champs again. Like, they're that good of a team. So this is something where it's like early training camp. This is probably as scary as it gets. Just like, yeah, we're going to try to monitor this situation. We're going to be careful about it, but we can't really we don't really know how it's going to play out, because hearing Sean McVay talk about it was pretty concerning, just because he's like, yeah, there's a lot of unknowns. We're resting him. We're just going to kind of see how it goes, which is not usually what you want to do with your franchise quarterback, and especially in a year where you're trying to win the Super Bowl. So that's probably all I got on Stafford. Not a ton, but just something that I wanted to bring up just because it has major implications if he does end up missing some time.
Absolutely. I mean, he's just someone that has always been consistent in terms of if he can play, he will play. And when you're looking at trying to build out this team and you're looking at Sean McVay's perspective, he didn't go out there and say, okay, we're not that concerned right now. We're still trying to figure out exactly what it is. Like, for example, John Harbaugh talked about Tyler Linderbaum because there were reports coming out where people were saying, oh, he has Les Frank. And, that's a significant thing. And John Harbaugh's like, it's not Les Frank. We don't know exactly what it is, but it's not that. We're not overly concerned about it. That's not what they're saying about Matthew Stafford. They're going out there and they're like, okay, we're getting a second opinion, which typically means you don't really like the first person's, diagnosis, because if you like it, you're not going to hear someone else. If someone tells you did a great job, but if someone tells you, you're not that hurt, you're not going to another doctor, because they may say, no, it's really bad, you need surgery. It's going to be rough. This is definitely something to monitor. If you're a Rams fan or if you're just a football fan in general, maybe you're a 49ers fan like Matt. That leaves the NFC West wide open if there's no Matthew Stafford. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out on. We wanted to talk about it because it seems like it's not getting any media attention. Like, instead, people want to talk about, Trayvon Diggs has deleted his Twitter account because he was getting burnt by NFL legend and college football hero, Simi Fehoko. Like, bro, I'm done hearing about Trayvon Diggs deleting his Twitter. Talk about Stafford may end up missing the season. But let's kind of move on, Matt, to the second topic. I'll let you kind of introduce it because, this is a topic that, you brought to the table and I really like, but let's see. Maybe I clicked the right one. There we go. Here we go. Let's get it, Matt. What are you thinking about this?
So for this second topic, we're going to be talking about a bunch of different quarterbacks, basically in a very, very pivotal season for them. So most of the guys on this list are going to be guys that we're talking about are basically like, okay, it's a make it or break it year. Either you're going to have a good year and you're going to be an NFL quarterback, or you very well could be a backup for the rest of your career and basically lose your starting job. Now, the first guy that we're going to discuss is not in that realm. It's going to be Dak Prescott. Obviously, Dak is not losing his job. That is very, very clear. However, I wanted to start with Dak just because I think Dak is kind of in a make it or break it year for, is he an elite quarterback? I truly think this is the kind of pivotal turning point for Dak's career of looking at him going, is he elite? There's been a lot of the guys throughout the NFL. Joe Flacco, Makana, you're a Ravens fan, that's a guy. Is he elite? We don't know. Guys get talked about that a lot of, is this guy elite quarterback? Is he not elite quarterback? Dak's kind of been popping in and out of that throughout like the last few seasons. The offense was absolutely stacked last year. Pretty underwhelming year overall for the Cowboys and for Dak Prescott. So he's coming into a year. He's losing Amari Cooper. He has CeeDee Lamb as the wideout one. They've had some offensive question marks. Zeke's still there. Tony Pollard's still there. They have a good backfield. Michael Gallup's coming back from injury. But there is immense pressure on Dak. Not only does they have to win the East, they absolutely have to win the East, but they need to make a playoff run for people to start kind of looking at Dak Prescott as the guy when he was younger as like, oh, this is a clearly elite, he's going to be an elite quarterback. Because, and it's not all Dak's fault. That's the other thing. He broke his leg. He had a pretty bad shoulder injury. And now we're kind of looking at him going, does he have some physical limitations? Because it's starting to feel that way. His velocity on his ball last year was probably the worst that's been in his career. So I have some serious question marks about him moving forward, but he's a guy that's definitely fighting for make it or break it. So do you think that he's an elite guy? Do you think that this is the season that decides it? And how is he going to answer that?
Yeah, when I look at, the term elite, it gets thrown around way too much. There's superstar, then there's elite, and then there's like kind of like above average. I feel like a lot of people say above average is elite, right? People say the 13th best quarterback in the NFL, they're like, oh, he's elite. He's above average. That's not what elite means. Elite means you're a step above better than average, right? And then superstar, there's maybe 3-4 superstars at each position, in the NFL. And Dak Prescott right now, like when I'm ranking quarterbacks, I move Dak in and out a lot. But I have him typically ranked between 9 and 12. That's kind of where he falls. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at him and I'm like, okay, I've got the Staffords, the Kylers, the Daks, the Derek Carrs, and those guys are kind of leading towards, the top 10 side, not on the back end. But I'm looking at him and I'm like, is there anything that's separating these guys from each other? And obviously now Stafford has the Super Bowl. But like Dak Prescott with those guys, it's like, okay. Like, it's not like you can put him above them, like, and just be like, oh yeah, it's Dak's above him. Like, you throw Josh Allen in that mix and you throw him above him, and everyone's like, yeah, exactly, no disagreement. Dak Prescott right now, I don't think he's elite. Now, could he be elite this year? Absolutely, and he can change that dialogue. Just because you're not elite at some point doesn't mean you can't be elite the next year. He's got an opportunity this year where he's now had, the full season of recovery, really. And then, Michael Jordan came back, didn't win a playoff series. No one talks about that. Dak Prescott could come back, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, you've got CeeDee Lamb, you've got Ezekiel Elliott, you've got Simi Fehoko, you've got Pollard. You have weapons. You've got defensive guys that a lot of people really like. Micah Parsons, kind of leading that group. He can definitely do it this year. But if he doesn't do it this year, if they don't win this division, because he's been playing in the worst division in football, without a doubt, there is no debate about that. If he can't win this division, again, when he is clearly the best quarterback, disrespect intended to Jalen Hurts, you can't be elite. Because it's not like the roster of the Cowboys is worse than any others. Cowboys probably have the best roster, and they easily have the best quarterback. If they don't win, Dak's not elite.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to just only judge it on Dak, but in terms of the narratives that'll be pushed, that's definitely it. I'm going to say that I don't think he's going to kind of change the narrative and be like, everyone's gonna be on board. Like, oh yeah, he made it. He made it this year, right? He's elite. I don't think that's going to be the case. They lost Amari Cooper. They lost James Washington. They basically have CeeDee Lamb. Makana, I know you love Simi Fehoko, so I'll toss him in there too. They drafted a rookie, Jalen Tolbert, but like their receiving core is not nearly as good as it was last year. Like it is significantly fallen off. The offensive line is, I'm looking at it, is pretty similar to what it was last year, but it's not like that elite offensive line that was once there when he started. I think that we're going to look at this season and go, oh, Dak's kind of fallen back to earth. Maybe this contract, not that the contract was a mistake, but like the injuries have kind of taken their toll on Dak. I don't think that league wide, we're going to look at Dak the same this year. I don't look at him as an elite quarterback anymore. I still think probably 10 to 14 range. I think you said 9 to 12. So pretty similar, but I think he's a step out of that. And I think that once again, this year, we're going to kind of see that, but losing Amari Cooper is a big blow, and people don't really talk about that. They're going to look to run the football a lot this year. Their passing attack is going to be pretty heavily centered around CeeDee Lamb. So, and I love CeeDee Lamb too. I think he's a fantastic wide receiver one, but there's just not all the depth that was there last year. A lot's going to depend on how Michael Gallup looks coming back from injury, but I'm going to say I'm kind of out on Dak Prescott. So I think that this is going to be a year where he takes maybe even a step back to his season last year, and we're going to be like, this hasn't really gone. Like, if he's an elite quarterback, this isn't the production that you would see from an elite quarterback. So that's where I'm kind of thinking on Dak. Anything else you want to add on him before we take off?
No, I think that's about it. Let's move on to the next guy. And I think, if I get it correct, you want to talk about Jalen Hurts. Because Jalen Hurts, when you look at young quarterbacks and you look at their systems, year 3 is probably the year. It's the make it or break it year, right? If it doesn't work out in your rookie year, that's fine. Adjusting to the NFL as a quarterback, that's tough. Year 2, if you were a high drafted quarterback, right? Like Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall pick, your team may not have helped you very much, and your team may not be great. So if you still are struggling in year 2, that's all right. But year 3 is like, okay, you're probably around 25 years old. You should be adjusted to the NFL unless you've had a significant injury, which Hurts has not. Let's see what you're made of. And if you can't do it now, you're probably not going to be getting that next contract. You're probably, you may still be in the NFL. You may be a journeyman, something like that, which there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to be a consistent starter for a proud franchise like the Philadelphia Eagles, you got to prove it this year. And they went out and they got A.J. Brown. They've drafted a great wide receiver last year. I think they also drafted, another one, Quez Watkins last year, or maybe that was 2 years ago. But Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, you have Miles Sanders, you have weapons, you have Dallas Goedert. If you aren't winning right now, again, they're still playing in a terrible division. I know I brought up the Cowboys. I think they're a little bit better. But they are still playing against the Washington Commanders and, the New York Giants, which is a lot worse than a lot of teams, maybe third and fourth worst teams. So it's without a doubt a make it or break it year. Matt, I'm curious to see what you have to say on Jalen Hurts, though, because we don't talk about him very much.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that, I think a lot of people have just decided, oh, yeah, he's good. He took his team to the playoffs last year. He's solid. I am not that confident when I look at Jalen Hurts to be like, oh, yeah, this guy's he's for sure an NFL starter. He was drafted in the second round. Love the draft pick. Big fan of the pick. Kind of drafted to be a backup player. That's the way that I took it as when he got taken. And now we're looking at it a couple years later. He's the clear starter. He took Carson Wentz's job. Another guy we're going to be talking about later. We're talking about a lot of guys in the NFC East today, apparently, because I guess that's the division of questionable quarterback play. But for Jalen Hurts, their arm strength is not there. Last year, they built a team that seemed completely different, the receiving core at least, completely different than what was built for his strengths, where it's a bunch of guys that go downfield, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, Jalen Reagor, right? Skinny guys that are fast and they get downfield. In the passing game, it was very lackluster at times. He had some rough games where he just was not connecting deep with guys. So what do? They go and they get him that superstar receiver in A.J. Brown that I will say fits fantastic with him. The RPOs that they're going to run are going to be absolutely sweet. the Eagles have a pretty solid offensive line as well. I believe last year was one of the best in the league, I want to say. But they're going to be able to run the football, and they should win. If they don't make the playoffs, if they are not a good team, if he individually does not take strides as a quarterback, they're going to be a team that is going to be in the quarterback market next year, which is crazy to say that, he's become a starter and they built this great offense around him. But they also have Dallas Goedert at tight end, a very underrated tight end. Like, their offense is really good. Their defensive personnel is also pretty solid. Like, they have an above average, probably a top 10 personnel in terms of all their guys in the NFL, maybe even higher than that. But he's going to be the guy that either takes them into the playoffs or doesn't make the playoffs. And he's a limited player. So if they can play to his strengths and he's able to really show yeah, okay, I can be a dual threat guy in this league. I might not have the arm strength, but you gave me AJ Brown. He has all that yak ability. That's going to open some stuff. I'm going to get some deep shots to Devontae Smith, who will be running wide open deep downfield. If he's able to take advantage of that, he might look really good, but I have some serious question marks about him. So I think that overall, he's going to kind of show yeah, I'm a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL, but I don't know how good he's going to be. I don't think the ceiling, I think a lot of people think the ceiling's way higher than it is. I think he's a solid starter. I think he's an average starting quarterback in the NFL, which is a lot higher than most people had him out of school. But I think he's shown some things, but it's going to be a big year because he's got to hit these layup throws with not really layup throws, but the open shots down the field. Because if he hits those open shots, dude, their offense is going to be scary. Yeah. Their team is going to be scary. And that's really what it's coming down to. And that's something he hasn't really been able to do throughout his career, both in college and now in the NFL. So a lot of pressure on him this year because they're stacked and they're trying to win.
And the final thing that I'll add on Jalen Hurts, and with a lot of quarterbacks, do not grade them based on their fantasy football production. Because Jalen Hurts is a great fantasy football option. Because he rushes for touchdowns and gets a lot of garbage time yards. That doesn't make you a good quarterback. Being that, obviously, there is somewhat of a correlation because putting up stats typically means you're a better. But do not say he was QB 8 in fantasy football or whatever it is. Thus, he's elite. He's an elite fantasy quarterback, but this is real football. And like Bill Belichick says, I only care about real football. When we're grading quarterbacks, real football only. Don't talk about fantasy football because he's a great dual threat, great rushing ability. The RPO is going to be filthy. But we got to see, like Matt said, can he hit those throws that we need him to make? And I'm rooting for him. I like Jalen Hurts. I've hyped him up. I loved that draft pick. I was not someone that was how dare they? No, I was nice. Get a second option. I thought that was really smart of them. But let's move into the next guy.
A lot of people are oh, giving up on Wentz, real nice. Yeah, that's probably a good call what they did. So I definitely, I don't know. I think he's a guy that can definitely prove it this year. But to what extent is kind of my question mark there. Next guy I have on the list, Makana, one of your most favorite quarterbacks, probably your favorite athletes, Mr. Jameis Winston. So Jameis kind of got dealt some bad cards last year. Maybe the worst receiving core in the entire NFL because they did not have
that may have been the worst I've ever seen.
It was so bad. No separation. But he looked good. He played well. When they had Kamara, it was going all right. They were going to make the playoffs with him. And then he gets hurt coming back this year. Still the same amount of pressure that there was before because this is a guy that's already lost his job at one spot. What do you feel about Jameis Winston? You think that he's a guy that is going to show that, okay, I'm a starting quarterback in the NFL? Or is there a little bit more pressure this year with potentially Michael Thomas back, but also Chris Olave there? Solid team, but definitely better receiving core. How do you feel about Jameis?
Jameis Winston, the first thing I'll say, I believe he had a light, he rolled his ankle or something like that. They don't think it's serious whatsoever. So I just want to say that so people don't go, well, he's injured right now. No. It was some light injury. He's got weapons. And we have seen, the thing about Jameis Winston, he is a gunslinger. That is what people know about him. He had Mike Evans. He threw the ball a lot to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And he slicing it through to O.J. Howard and all those guys. That was what he did. And people were no, you're throwing too many picks. Bruce Arians did not like that. So, where does he go? He sits behind Drew Brees. And I wrote an article about this, and I talked about how this was the best possible thing that could happen to Jameis Winston. Not only is he behind Drew Brees, one of the smartest quarterbacks of all time, but he's also working with, Drew Brees' quarterback guru, Sean Payton. And he can sit behind him and learn, okay, this is how you manage an offense and play smart football. And we saw that last year. We absolutely saw the Jameis Winston that Sean Payton had been working on last season. Did he have some boneheaded throws? Absolutely. But was it every quarter throwing a throw where you're like, man, you shouldn't do that? No, it wasn't like that. It was like, okay, maybe he throws one or two throws a game that were bad. But also, when you have no separation from your wide receivers, you sometimes got to squeeze it in there. But now all of a sudden, he's got weapons. He's got Michael Thomas. He's got Jarvis Landry. And he's got Chris Olave, who... That dude's bad, man. That is a bad man right there. He has been destroying the Saints cornerback so far in preseason. I think he's a fantastic deep threat. And what does Jameis Winston do? He's got a monster arm, and that's half of the throws that he throws, and it's like, oh man, he shouldn't have thrown that. Those are long throws. Remember when he was just dotting up with, what was it, Callaway in the preseason last year? Just hitting him for 50-yard throws, just like over the shoulder. They brought in Jameis Winston in a playoff game, the famous Nickelodeon game, and they said, hey, why don't we run this? I don't remember what it was. Double reverse, Jameis Winston throw, comes in, throws an absolute dot down the field. He can throw the ball down the field. He's got Chris Olave. Michael Thomas is back. I think people are really going to remember that Michael Thomas is really, really good at football. Is he going to go long and get 40-yard receptions? No. But he's going to be consistently open and catch the football. All of a sudden, Jameis Winston has the two things he needs. Open receivers and a guy that can get the big play. Because that's what Jameis looks for. He wants the big play, and then he wants to rifle it into someone who will catch it. He now has that. He should absolutely look like the quarterback the Saints needs to take them to the playoffs. And I think he will take them to the playoffs. I'm going to go a step further and say, if healthy, they're going to win that division.
Over the Bucks?
Without a doubt, yeah.
You think so? Okay, yes. I don't know. I don't know about the division. I mean, they could.
I think the way their defense has played against Tom Brady.
That's true.
For some reason, they look amazing against the Bucs. Like, they get the right pass rush. Like, I don't think they're a better team, but I think they match up for some reason pretty well against the Buccaneers. That's why I'll say that.
So I think they could beat the Bucs once or twice. I don't know if they're going to end up having the better record at the end of the season, though. That would kind of be my question with that. But in terms of Jameis Winston on the list of guys that we're talking about, he's the guy I like the most to have a great year next year. You bring up the receiving core, the difference in the receiving core, but they also brought in Jarvis Landry. I'm not going to go out here and say Jarvis Landry is a good wide receiver, but he was better than what they were rolling out last year. So right now, like, their starting three wideouts are going to be MT, Chris Olave, who I think is probably going to have in terms of numbers, probably the best numbers of all the rookies in the NFL. For wideouts. And then you have Jarvis, and then coming out kind of off of the bench, you got Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, and what is his name? Hardy? Is that the little guy, the kick returner, the guy that's been there for a couple of years. So you have a lot of speed. You have other deep threats, but you also have two guys that are really good at getting open underneath as well. So I'm pumped for this offense. I'm pumped for the Saints in general. I think they are a playoff team. If Jameis doesn't go down last year, I think they are a lock to be in a wild card spot. But I like Jameis Winston a lot. I think he's probably going to have the best year of everyone that we're talking about right here. So big fan of Jameis Winston. Next guy, going to go back into the NFC East. So going to talk about Mr. Daniel Jones. Now, Daniel Jones has had a very weird career. I think we talked about him a couple weeks ago, I want to say, Makana, but hated the pick, thought it was an awful pick. Last year, kind of the first year where he's shown some signs that, okay, like, this dude can play in the NFL. He looks all right. And then you just look at the supporting cast that he has in terms of their offensive line. It's been absolutely abysmal. Andrew Thomas, like, it's just, they did get Evan Neal, which is a big win for them. Great offensive lineman, great selection there. The weapons are actually pretty solid. Saquon, Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney. I'm a big Kadarius Toney fan. Sterling Shepard, if he's able to play, he's had a bunch of concussions, so it's kind of always up and down with him. They drafted Wan'Dale Robinson as well. They still have Darius Slayton. Like, they have a deep wide receiver room. But I'm going to say right now, I think this is his last year on the Giants, because we're looking at it, and I do not know if the new coaching staff is going to. They don't seem very sold on Daniel Jones, and in all honesty, they're coming from watching Josh Allen, right? I don't really blame them. Like, I think that Jones is all right. I don't think he's a bad quarterback, but I just feel like it's more of a matter of the dude needs an offensive line, and they're not going to, even this year, even after drafting Evan Neal, they're not going to be a great offensive line. They have a pretty solid amount of weapons. I think we're going to see the weapons flash. I think we're going to see Tony become a stud, but I don't think Daniel Jones is the quarterback of the future in New York anymore. And I actually have kind of come around on him quite a bit, but I just think that they're going to go and try to make a big move and have a splash quarterback move where they're like, all right, we want to have an elite quarterback. That's how you win in this league. And in all honesty, I kind of completely agree, because I don't think they're going to win many playoff games with Daniel Jones. Is he a starter? Yeah, but I don't think this is going to be the best year for him, just because of really the offense that he's had to play with the last couple of years and the offense that he's going to play with this year. So that's kind of where I'm at on Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes.
Yeah, Daniel Jones, top tier nickname, bottom tier quarterback. When I look at him, the defense that he had, his rookie year was significantly better than what he has right now. The offensive line's still bad. The weapons, they've gotten better. They have, bringing in Kenny Golladay was huge. The contract they gave him was even bigger. But he really was unable to really get anything going with Kenny Golladay. It was maybe the biggest disappointment of all of the offseason transactions from any team, especially the wide receivers. Like, it was like, where's Kenny Golladay? Because we're so used. And Kenny Golladay, it's not like he's coming to a different skill set, right? Daniel Jones is massive arm. That's like his skill set when throwing the football. Like, huge arm, he can throw the ball deep. Stafford could throw the ball deep. And it was like, that's why Kenny Golladay worked so well with Stafford, was because Stafford could just rifle it down the field, and Kenny Golladay used his great jump ball ability to get catches. And Daniel Jones and Kenny Golladay were just not doing that. And it was really difficult to watch, because I love Tony. I love Golladay. I'm a big fan of Sterling Shepard. And it was just like, what's going on here? Why are they not getting anything going? And again, I say this about every team in the NFC East. They are not playing against the most difficult competition in their own division. They get easier games more consistently than any other team in the or any other division in the NFL. And you're still struggling heavily, to be able to put up numbers and put up yards. And I think a lot of people, they look at it and they're like, okay, but he doesn't fumble as much with Daniel Jones. It's not necessarily the case, because Daniel Jones obviously in 2019 had like the worst fumbling season ever. I think he had 19 fumbles. 2020, he had 10 fumbles. He didn't play in every game. Last year, he had 7 fumbles. He only played in 11 games. He was on pace for like 12 fumbles, which is still way too many. And I get that he has a poor offensive line, but I don't see this as a make-it year for Daniel Jones with the Giants. Now, does he maybe show a flash that another team wants? Like, if I'm him, I'm not staying with the Giants. I'm leaving. Like, why would you want to be there? Because they're not getting... Like, I get they tried to get you an O-lineman this year, which they did in Evan Neal, which I thought, great pick. They honestly nailed it with their first round. Thibodeau and Evan Neal, fantastic. But Daniel Jones needs an O-line and a coaching staff that believes in him. And I don't think they do. And I don't think it's going to work out very well this year. And I don't hate Daniel Jones. I don't think he's very good, but I don't hate him.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, it just kind of goes back to that draft pick. Like, they were not in a spot to go and take a young quarterback. Like, they have not built the team around him. And now they're starting to finally get the pieces together on the offensive end. And now their defense isn't that good. So really just poor roster construction, poor team building. And Daniel Jones kind of had to take the brunt of it, not a good spot for him. But last NFC East quarterback, dude, I cannot believe that we accidentally talked about all of the NFC East quarterbacks.
Not intended.
No,
Matt just wrote them out. Like, they're not next to each other. Matt was like, oh, let's just talk about what do we think? What guys make it or break it? He's just writing them down.
Yeah, and it's all of them. It's all of them. So last guy, Carson Wentz. I'll go out and say I don't think it's gonna work. I think that I think this is almost maybe even a year behind of like him on the Colts was more of the make it or break it year. And Carson Wentz, it's not that he's not talented. It's not that he doesn't make flash plays, doesn't make big plays, but he does not consistently hit the underneath routes. He does not consistently hit the swing routes to the running backs. I mean, I remember a while back, there was one throw when he was on the Eagles where like he just completely airmailed the ball to the running back. And I was like, dude, you're an NFL quarterback. How did you miss that throw like that badly? That's going to always be the problem with Carson Wentz. He's one of the guys that like, in terms of like mentally, like you kind of question, like, I mean, you talk about how big of a deal it is, like intangibles for quarterbacks. He's a guy that has had those intangibles questioned a lot, and guys haven't really liked him. Receivers haven't liked playing with him. I don't know how this year it's going to be any different than it was on the Colts. He's in a worse spot than he was last year, and he missed the playoffs with the Colts, and they were banged up early on, especially early on. They were really banged up, but this team is not as good as the Colts team. This offensive line is not good. Yes, you got Scary Terry. I like Curtis Samuel. You have a plethora of running backs. The defense is pretty good, but like I don't have faith in Carson Wentz this year. I don't think that it's going to be like he flipped the switch finally. I'm out on Carson Wentz. I think it might be his last year starting. Honestly, I would not be surprised at all if it is his last year, just because he's getting kind of passed around by a bunch of these teams. Is like, oh, can we get a bridge guy? Like he's maybe going to be a bridge quarterback. That's kind of what he's become, and it's really sad because you look back on that Eagles season when he was going to win the MVP, and he just has never looked the same since then, since that ACL injury. So I feel for the guy because a lot of it is because of injuries, but I'm out on Carson Wentz.
Yeah, when I look at Carson Wentz, I didn't like him on the Colts. I just felt like it didn't make sense because I feel like the Colts are built around Jonathan Taylor, which may be like, wait, they're built around a running back. That should help a quarterback that's been struggling. Carson Wentz like wants to make plays, and the Colts wanted to limit that. Like they didn't want him to try and be risky because they were like, we want to give the ball to Jonathan Taylor. I actually think the Washington Commanders is a better spot for him, even though it's a worse roster, like worse players around him. But I think it's a better spot because I think they're going to say, go gun ho. Just absolutely do whatever you can to win. Because if they lose, it doesn't matter. They'll draft Bryce Young if they're really bad. Like they'll get a quarterback if he's not that good. They're going into this year and they're like, let's see what this guy can do. Because the quarterbacks that they've had have not been trying to go wild. Maybe Taylor Heineke, but that was because he knew his time in the NFL was probably going to be really short as a starting quarterback. But they've been very conservative. And there's nothing wrong with conservative quarterbacks. But, Alex Smith is a very conservative quarterback. Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace, was very conservative. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you don't have the players around you that can help elevate that, you're not going to win. Carson Wentz is going to be able to go out there. They're going to be like, bro, just run around. Like, if you want, like, just start slinging it. And he's going to start slinging it. And I really like their wide receivers, actually. I think De'Ami Brown out of North Carolina, who got drafted last year, super underrated deep threat in the NFL. Great in college. I think this year he now has a quarterback that'll really be able to get him that ball. I think Carson Wentz will play pretty well. I don't know if he stayed because I think he's kind of a bridge quarterback for them this year. But I think he solidifies himself as a potential starter in the NFL. I think there will be teams calling after this year about him. I don't think the Commanders will, just because, again, I think their timeline is not having a quarterback like Carson Wentz right now. I think they want to go young and build up with their young weapons. They just extended Terry McLaurin. They have their nice running back in Antonio Gibson and stuff like that. They're trying to build up, but Wentz is on the decline. They're trying to go on, they're trying to get up to the Super Bowl. But that's kind of my thoughts on Carson Wentz. I like Carson Wentz. I like watching him play. Needs to get more consistent with that. I don't know if he will. But if you let him run wild, which he hasn't been allowed to do probably since the Super Bowl season when he got injured, it could be really nice.
Yeah, and they also drafted Dotson in the first round, and I think it's Brian Robinson has looked really good in camp too. I know a lot of people like him as a back, but I think it's just overall like I think it's gonna be tough for them to make the playoffs. We've already talked about two teams that are better in the division, I would say. So this is just a tough one where I think I just think he's kind of started to become in like that bridge quarterback territory. Like that's who he is. Like we know who Carson Wentz is at this time, which isn't terrible, but also isn't good. So it's kind of not really the best spot to be. But the next guy is a guy that I actually really like a lot. I think a lot of people have just decided, oh, this guy sucks. He's not good. He's a terrible player. People don't like him. But the guy I'm talking about is Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield has 1 year removed from being like the hero for the Cleveland Browns. Like this guy took him, he didn't look that good, but they almost beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. There was a fumble at the pylon that kind of screwed that up. I believe it was Rashad Higgins, I want to say. But definitely just a spot where we're looking at. And I think Baker's in maybe the lowest pressure spot out of any of these guys. Maybe you could say Jameis as well. But Baker's not the Panthers and Baker are not expected to make to the playoffs. There has not been much success since Cam Newton was there. You just had a disaster with Sam Darnold. Now you did draft a rookie in Matt Corral, who I actually do like a lot. But in terms of Baker Mayfield, I think he's like the easiest quarterback bounce back candidate I have. He was not very good last year. His team was completely in shambles almost all season. They were rolling out. They basically ran out of tackles one game. Like they legit ran out of offensive tackles one game and had to like have a guard like come out, like not a swing tackle, but a guard like going, all right, dude, you're going to play tackle. Good luck. So the offensive line's breaking down. That great run game that was the year before wasn't exactly there. You guys have seen the receivers that Cleveland's rolled out for Baker Mayfield haven't been good either.
We talked about Jarvis.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Jarvis. What they're wide out one for a little bit there. Like that's not pretty. So you look at the Panthers team, another team. They draft a lineman early on. They draft their tackle. The offensive line isn't great. They've tried to make a couple improvements. It's not going to be that good. That's where my concerns are with Baker Mayfield. But we look at the receiving core. Not the best either, right? It's not that great. That's the thing. But you do have DJ Moore. You have a legit star receiver. And the big thing for Baker Mayfield is he's going to be playing with Christian McCaffrey. We've seen him with elite running backs. He had, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb there. If he has Christian McCaffrey healthy for the whole season, this offense is going to be maybe not good, but sneaky average. I don't know if that's really a thing. They're going to be sneaky average.
Sneaky average.
Because the defense is so good in Carolina. Like people don't realize that, but the defense is stacked. Me and you, I mean, we've talked about the Panthers defense. They have a ton of pieces. They are legit on the defensive side of the football, but offensively, if they can just control the clock, play smart football, and Baker doesn't force things, they could be a team that sneaks into a wild card spot in the NFC. The NFC is not good. The NFC does not have a lot of talent, and there's always going to be injuries. So a couple of these teams have a quarterback get injured, they could easily make the playoffs. And they're one of the lowest teams in terms of projected win total going into the season. They're like projected to win like 5 games or 6 games. There is zero expectations at all. People are just out on Baker. I don't think Baker was ever worth the number 1 overall pick. But he's going to be – I feel like he's going to be serviceable. And if he's serviceable in Carolina and they come back next year and they build the offensive line around him, they try to add another wideout for him, and you still got McCaffrey, you still got DJ Moore, and that stud defense, he could have a career resurrection in Carolina. So I think that he's a guy that just is not really getting talked about enough. And I don't think he's amazing or anything like that, but I think he was completely hurt last year playing on maybe – one of overall, just because of injuries, one of the worst offenses in the sport. And they were still fighting for the playoffs at the end of the year. Like the thing is his performance wasn't good though. That was kind of that's the problem. But like everything's telling you like, yeah, he's probably going to struggle. He has nothing to work with here. This year, a couple bigger pieces, no expectations. I'm buying into the Baker Mayfield hype that probably only I have created, no one else.
Well, I love Baker Mayfield. I love the spot he's in. And I love the change. Baker Mayfield succeeded in Cleveland. He succeeded. If you told Cleveland Browns fans, when they're sitting there, the previous season they took Myles Garrett number 1 overall. And they're like, this guy that we're going to draft, we're not going to tell you who it is. Whether it's Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold, Lamar Jackson, you told him, hey, we're going to be in the playoffs in his rookie deal. They wouldn't believe you. They'd be like, what? No. He's going to play for us for 1 year. We're going to draft a new quarterback, number 1 overall. We've done it every year for the last 38 years. We can't get anyone. No one takes us to the playoffs. No one. Baker Mayfield comes in his rookie year. I was like, wait a minute, is that a touchdown record? And he didn't even start week 1 because they were doing Tyrod Taylor and Hugh Jackson, the legend, who was paid to lose games. Hugh Jackson, whatever. He didn't want to play Baker. Baker still comes in and was like, oh my gosh, this guy's destroying everybody. I was like, okay, this guy's kind of good. He almost had them in the playoffs that season. Or, had them like competing. And it was like, okay. Next year, I was like, all right, wow, they're all right. 2 seasons ago, it was like, wait a minute, they're in the playoffs? And Matt, like you said, they almost beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. Chiefs went to the Super Bowl. They beat the brakes off of Ben Roethlisberger and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, it was ugly. That's success. And then they turned on him. And Baker Mayfield is an energetic player that brings drive and energy to everything that he does, on your football team. And when your fans aren't cheering for you like they used to, the energy guys, they don't thrive as much because the crowd is what, fuels them. Baker Mayfield is the type of guy to stake the flag in the center of the field. He's the type of guy to slide into the end zone in the game-changing, lead-breaking run against the Baltimore Ravens in Monday Night Football in prime time, leading a comeback. That's the type of guy he is. And the crowd goes crazy. And then all of a sudden, it was last year, it was like, oh, man, we don't like Baker anymore. We want him gone. It's like, no, your offense just sucks. He's going to be in Carolina where they're desperate to watch any football. Like, they're like, please don't be horrible. And he's got playmakers. Christian McCaffrey's going to make plays, and Baker Mayfield's going to start doing some dance moves, and he's going to start, playing the guitar, whatever he wants to do. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of energy. And Matt, like you said, I think absolutely they should absolutely be in contention for a wild card spot this season because they're going to play with energy, and that defense is going to force a lot of turnovers. Brian Burns is going to get some strip sacks, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you've got Baker Mayfield who can run play action as well as anybody. Christian McCaffrey, who is play actioning too, which everyone has to pay attention to. Then you got DJ Moore can get open. You got Terrace Marshall Jr., who is a stud. And then you can also check it down to some guy named Christian McCaffrey, who, if he was a wide receiver, would maybe be a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. He's going to do well.
I think so too, man. I'm sipping the Baker Mayfield Kool-Aid for sure. So, final guy, the guy that I know Makana and I think very differently on. I think he sucks. I'll tell you guys that right now. But this guy is Mitch Trubisky. And it's really interesting because we talk about Baker Mayfield. This one is just like completely different, even though he makes the playoffs, right? But he just looks bad in Chicago. It ends pretty rough. He goes, and my thought is it's kind of hard to believe in hype when you're getting hype for not playing for a whole year. Like that might be the worst way to get any like, oh, this guy's on the come up. He looked great in practice. Sick. Like that doesn't really mean too much. Now, I will say one thing about Mitch Trubisky is that he does have a fantastic supporting cast in terms of his weapons. Offensive line, pretty horrible in Pittsburgh. But you look at the wideouts, you got Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and George Pickens. Those are 3 studs. Pat Freiermuth, I think he's pretty good too. And of course, Najee Harris, who's another elite back. So he has like all of the guys around him. I just don't think Mitch is any good. He doesn't get the ball out quick enough, and I think it's going to look really bad. And I will go on record saying I think this is going to look worse than Big Ben when he had absolutely no arm strength and was completely shot. I think it's going to look worse than that, and it's because at least Big Ben was getting the ball out quick. I do not see Mitch Trubisky being able to get the ball out quick unless he has completely changed his game, but this is a guy that I honestly have like no faith in. And Makana, you being a Ravens fan, I think you should be very happy that the Steelers decided to go with him, because if they go with like any of the other quarterbacks on the market, I think that they're a very obvious playoff team. But because Mitch is there, I don't have faith in them. So sorry to be a complete hater on Mitch, but I do not see it.
You are a hater, Matt. Because when I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and I look at the roster that they have, at least on offense, this is a good spot for Mitch Trubisky. Much better weapons than he had in Chicago. Much better coaching than he had in Chicago. And he now gets to play and be himself. He gets to run the ball. He gets to move outside the pocket. He gets to run the play action game. And he's running play action. Again, running play action to garbage running backs isn't very good. No offense to Tariq Cohen or whoever was starting, way back in the day for Mitch Trubisky. But that's not going to work as well as a Najee Harris, as a Dalvin Cook. These types of players that, not Najee Harris last year was the clear best rookie running back. I think he's probably a top 10 running back in the NFL. Right now he can catch the pass. You'd say top 5? I'm completely fine with that. I didn't want to make you too upset with the top 10.
Dude, I've never seen a guy that can move vertically and horizontally like him. Yeah. Like just the downhill speed and the ability to just like stop on a dime, the cuts at his size, it's incredible. It's like Derrick Henry-esque, legitimately.
Yeah. And so you have Mitch Trubisky, who is mobile, and he's going to be able to run read option. He's going to be able to run RPOs, and he's going to be able to move outside the pocket. And it's going to give a new dynamic to this Pittsburgh offense, because I don't think Big Ben was the right quarterback for this team. Even though it's the Steelers and legacy and whatever, that was not the quarterback they needed. Because Big Ben can't extend the field. He can't move. They don't have that great of an offensive line. He struggled, horribly. Mitch Trubisky at least will be able to move outside when there's pressure, and he will be able to hit the guys short, and he'll also be able to hit the deep ball. Now, will he hit the deep ball every time? No. But they'll be able to throw it. Not being able to throw the deep ball, we saw with Drew Brees against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the year Tom Brady won the Super Bowl. They lost that game because of Drew Brees. Because there was no threat of the Saints getting a pass over 20 yards. There was no threat. Mitch Trubisky has Chase Claypool. He's got Deontay Johnson. He's got now George Pickens, who bad man right there. That dude looks like I said. They also have Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin coming out of Memphis. I believe he ran a 4.2, 40-yard dash as a deep threat. I think it was like a 4.29. 4.2. Crazy fast. He's got weapons. He's got a situation in coaching that is going to allow him to take strides in his game. And he doesn't need to put up 35 points a game because he has TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick. Are they the best defense in the NFL? No. But they're good. They've got, when you have two players that are, I say, TJ Watt's the best edge rusher in the NFL, and then Minka Fitzpatrick, I think, a top 10 safety, probably in the NFL. You're set. You've got enough plays. They're going to put up 20 points a game, maybe 24. And they're going to allow, 15, 17. That's going to get wins. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. He will not have a losing season this year.
It's funny because I get your points. I understand him. I'm not trying to kind of crap on him, but I don't see it with Mitch, man. I can see this stuff, and I'm trying to imagine the offense, and I just see Mitch going down, having a guy wide open and being hesitate, and then throw a ball over the middle, and his helicopters his receiver, gives him a hospital ball, or going on a screen and someone kind of jumps around and hesitates and just disaster plays all over, and that was the thing because Big Ben was so bad. He was so bad the last 2 years. But my thought was, out of all of the offseason moves, this is probably the one I liked least because I thought that they could have made a big difference to their team.
Liked least? You think this is worse than Christian Kirk?
Okay. That's just the Jags being the Jags, man. But in terms of, the quarterback's moves, I thought the Steelers could have made a huge upgrade. I thought they could have done something really good, and I was they just kind of threw it away with Mitch. So I'm going to have to put $5 on it with you, man, because – we got to put $5 on Mitch because this is we usually agree with a lot of stuff, but I just do not.
This is one of the first times that we have just like adamantly disagreed about something in the NFL.
I just can't, like, I'm trying to envision the offense, right? And I just see Mitch fucking it up, honestly. Like, that's all I see, dude. Like, I can't, like, because I think all of the skill players are there. Like, I love their skill players. They probably have the deepest, like, skill group, like, overall in the league. Just of, like, we have, like, 5 guys that we have, like, a superstar running back, and then we have, like 3 of the receivers that are really legit, and like other guys that are coming on that have been like, so I just really like their team, but like, and their defense is sick too, but their offensive line is bad. Like, okay, if they had a better offensive line, I might be able to buy into it a little bit more, but like, that's the thing. Like, I don't think that Mitch can hang with the speed of the NFL. That's my problem. Like, that's why I'm like not out, like where I'm out on him. But we're gonna have to put $5 on Mitch, man, because I want to see where this one goes. I don't know what our last football bet was, but this will be a fun one. But anything else you want to add on him?
Kind of the final thing is just the way that this Pittsburgh, like when I look at the AFC North, I think of the Steelers as the second best team, like hands down. Like if Deshaun Watson was healthy, I think the Bengals are the worst team in this division, like legitimately, or not healthy. If Deshaun Watson was playing, better term for it. But like the Pittsburgh, like they will win games because of Mike Tomlin. It may not be 100%, oh, well, Mitch threw for 450 yards, but I feel like he's going to do enough. This team, like Mitch Trubisky, is a much better quarterback than Duck Hodges, than Devlin the Duck Hodges. He's also much better than Mason. Brings me nothing for Christmas, Rudolph. All right? And Mike Tomlin had a winning season with those fools. A winning season with those fools.
So, okay, I'm not going to say that they're not going to have a winning season. I just don't think he's going to be good. I think he's going to suck. And I also think he's going to lose his job to Pickett. Like, that's the other thing. Like, I think they're like, dude, Mitch is bad. We're done with Mitch. Like, pretty early on. I think it's going to be like, right out of the gate, like, oh, no, week 1, we already saw 3 Mitchell Trubisky plays that we remember when he was on the Bears. Like, that's what I'm thinking it's going to look like. But I think that's probably going to do it for the make it or break it. So final topic. I think this is a real interesting one. A team that definitely has got a lot of coverage in the past, but all of a sudden people don't really talk about them that much. Not very exciting. Now, if you are a New England Patriots fan, you probably talk about them a lot, and you absolutely love this team, and you're all sold on Mac Jones and whatnot. But Mac Jones is a guy that had a pretty solid rookie season. And I'm expecting his second year to be an absolute nightmare and an absolute disaster, because if anyone has been following what's been going on in New England, basically their offense looks horrible. Their coaching is all over the place. Right now, their technical offensive coordinator, even though it's kind of just a weird group, but it's Matt Patricia. Yes, you remember, former defensive coordinator for the Patriots, is now their offensive coordinator. So we're looking at this. David Andrews recently, like, basically was talking about the offense and said, like, they were horrible. And David Andrews has been their starting center for quite some time there. He said that the offensive line looks out of shambles. The communication is a big problem. They're not being able to run the football. And their offense is just getting completely shut down in training camp. Now, defense on the other side is pretty solid. I don't think it's quite what it was last year. But this is still not a good sign when your offense just cannot do anything in practice. And the other thing is all of the miscommunication. I think this is going to be a disaster season for the Patriots offense. I have faith in their defense pretty much year in and year out. And even when they had 6 guys leave because of COVID in 2020, like, their defense still was decent enough, and they get exposed sometimes, but Bill Belichick, being the genius that he is, was able to kind of compensate for those guys, and they ended up being all right. But the offense this year, they do not have Josh McDaniels anymore. And I know Josh McDaniels is unproven as a head coach, but I always thought he was a really solid coordinator, someone that Bill could kind of just be like, hey man, go play with the offense, go ahead. They have Matt Patricia as their OC. They do not have a good offensive coaching staff. And we're talking about a guy in Mac Jones who, not trying to rip Mac Jones, but Mac Jones is like your prototypical system quarterback. Like, that's like how he looks. That's how he looks. That's how he plays, everything like that. They do not have the personnel on offense. Their players are horrible. Kendrick Bourne is probably their best wideout. And I like Kendrick Bourne. I'm a Niner fan. I have a soft spot for KB. But the guy you bring in, like your flash move is like, yeah, we got him, Devontae Parker. We drafted a guard in the first round. We got
A
Jacoby.
guard with like a consensus third or fourth round grade out of Chattanooga.
Yeah, so it's like, so it's probably going to take some time for him to adjust to the speed of the NFL as well and the size of the NFL being from small school. But I think they're going to be awful, dude. Like, I think this is going to be a probably a bottom 5 offense in the NFL, which is crazy because what do we grow up? Me and you, what do we grow up with like throughout our career throughout our watching career?
A system quarterback playing for the Patriots. Nothing's changed. The first one broke our hearts every time, but Tom Brady. No, it was great offense. And also great defense though. That's the thing, is they always had both. When they drafted Mac Jones, they messed up. I don't care.
It worked last year.
It worked. Yeah, it worked last year, but like long term, I don't see a benefit. Like, how much longer is Bill Belichick going to coach? When a new coach comes in, when Bill Belichick retires, I've seen people saying, like, I think he retires this year. When a new coach comes in, they're not going to want Mac Jones. Like, I don't see any coach coming in and be like, I got a quarterback I can build around. Like, no. He's a quarterback where you have everything already set, and they're like, well, I guess this guy's available in the middle of the first round. I guess we can draft him because we kind of need somebody because we don't want Jared Stidham. Like, when Jared Stidham's the other option, you're probably taking almost anybody.
Dude, and the offense like is horrible. Like, and the thing is, so apparently like one of the big things with the Patriots that they've always been able to run the football so well, right?
Yeah.
Well, they changed their scheme, and basically what David Andrews said is like they're not meshing at all, and they cannot like there's miscommunication, guys are running the wrong plays. I get it's early on in camp, but like we saw like when Matt Patricia was kind of running the show as on the Lions, like it was a disaster. Like it was always that kind of stuff, and he was the DC for the Patriots, but like if you're the DC for the Patriots, like who's their real defensive coordinator? It's Bill Belichick every single time. Bill Belichick usually is in his hands-on when it comes to the offense. So I think they're in a legit like bad spot, and I think a lot of it has to do with the coaching staff, which is something that is so weird to say, right? Like, oh yeah, the Patriots' problem is their coaching staff, but like it legit is the problem. Like that's part of it. But I don't know if you saw this, but in the offseason, this is a little bit off topic, but in the offseason, there was like a rumored trade of like the Raiders, since McDaniels went to the Raiders are potentially going to swap Derek Carr and Mac Jones. And I was like, dude, the Patriots should be all over that. And Patriots fans hated that idea. They wouldn't have these problems. Like if you have a guy like Derek Carr running like like running the helm, I think it'd look a lot better. But it just seems and this also isn't like to be like, oh, Mac, like way to go, Mac Jones. Like I don't think it's going to be his fault that they're bad, but I don't think he's going to be the guy that's going to be able to elevate this offense or is going to have the experience to really come out there and be like, all right, like let's get this going. Like I can kind of be not like a coach, but a coach on the field where like Derek Carr totally would have been that. Like, dude, I think they were in such a bad spot. Like I think they're going to suck. Like maybe not defensively, and like they won't suck because they'll squeak out games and they'll win stuff by 2 points. But like as the Patriots always do. But the offense is probably going to be a bottom 5 offense, dude. Like I don't know how it's going to be any better than that.
Like their running back core isn't bad, but it's not enough to carry you. Right? Like Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris, they're not bad players. But when they're a focal point, when they're the offense, then they're bad. Now, if you had Devontae Adams, and then you had those guys, you'd be like, wow, that's a good core to have. But when your entire offense is based on being able to run the football, and you don't have that great of an offensive line, and your running back core is like average, and your quarterback is probably below average, maybe average, he's kind of accurate, it's not going to work. Now, they'll probably win games, like Matt said, because Belichick squeaks them out. He out-coaches everybody outside of, the top-tier coaches in the NFL.
Yeah, you remember the old Sean McDermott, Bill Belichick game last year in like the crazy weather. That was a sweet one. But who's there next to Belichick? Running the power pitch offense. It's Josh McDaniels. He's been there for so long, and you had that continuity there, even though Mac Jones is a rookie quarterback. So you just don't have that this year. And they also lose J.C. Jackson after just losing Stephon Gilmore. So the cornerback room isn't as good. I just think this team's going to take a serious decline. And also, just for reference, last year, I thought the Patriots were, really underrated. I expected Mac Jones to be pretty solid last year. And I thought they were going to be a playoff team just because you looked at the defense and you're like, yeah, everyone wants to be like, oh, 2020, they weren't that good. Yeah, but they didn't have half of their defensive starters, and all those guys were coming back last year. So I definitely like this team a lot less than last year. Question for you, final thing. Could they get last place? Could the Jets be better?
No.
You don't think so?
No, because Bill Belichick, the thing about... I cannot
remember
remember who I heard this from. Someone told this to me. Maybe it was the guys from whatever that show was called, the Talking Trash, or whatever it was. And they talked about how in the NFL, you're given 4 games, you're going to get ruined in 4 games, and you have to win the other 8. When you're given, and the 4 games that you're ruined are just really bad luck. Maybe your guys are hurt for a week or whatever it is. Bill Belichick wins the games that you need to win. When another team plays poorly, Bill Belichick wins. They are guaranteed to win at least, 4 games. Because if the Jets play a team and the other team is messing up, they can still lose. I would not be surprised if they still lose. And I really like what the Jets have done. I said they can win, maybe 5 or even 6 games this year. But the Patriots should have 7 wins. It'll be maybe they'll win the first couple of weeks or whatever, and they're like, oh, they're 3-2. Maybe a wild card. And then it'll be like, oh, wait, people realize this offense kind of sucks, and they, started losing a little bit more. Kind of like last year. But, yeah. I don't think they get last at all.
So for me, this is what I'm thinking. Not that they're going to get last place. I don't want to say that because I want to have faith in Bill. But I do think the Jets are a lot better than they were last year.
Oh, yeah.
The Jets are a lot better. The Bills are going to be better than them. I don't think that the Dolphins are all right, but the Dolphins are a lot better. You cannot say anything else. And I like Mike McDaniel. So I started looking at him it could be pretty close. The only thing is that all these teams are playing in the AFC too, and the AFC is so absurdly stacked compared to the NFC. So there's also that aspect of it. I don't think the Patriots have a winning record. I'm not going to say they're going to get last place because most likely the Jets will, but I don't think they're going to have a winning record, which has been a complete rarity throughout Bill Belichick's coaching career. But I think that I think that you look at the personnel and it's just dude, this is awful. They're not working with much. Defensively, who's their best player? Matthew Judon? Honestly, is that their best defensive player? And I know he was great there, but McCourty, Jalen Mills, these guys aren't it's not pretty, man. It's really not pretty. So that's probably all I got, though. Anything else you want to add, man?
No, I think that's all. Got to talk about a lot of quarterbacks today, which is a lot of fun. But anybody watching, if you guys want to subscribe, check out the other stuff. We have a bunch of different content creators that post on this channel. Try and go live every night. And we set out the schedule. And so should be a lot of fun, guys. Make sure to stay tuned. We post all the segments as well. So check those out, as well for past segments and things like that.